are intimately connected. So this is your geography quiz of the day, ladies and gentlemen. Where do you find beluga whales on the planet? What region? The Arctic, yes. I see people pointing up and north. And the ocean is also a very good guess. But yes, it is the Arctic Ocean specifically you're looking at.
That's funny.
There are lots of other animals we find up there. Things like polar bears, seals, walruses, puffins, people. And all these people and animals' lives are often shaped by that extreme environment. Because really, what is the first thing that pops into your head when you think of the Arctic? Ice, cold, snow, yes. All these things that can make it very difficult to live up in the north. Well, luckily for beluga whales, they have a number of adaptations that allow them to both survive and thrive up in those Arctic waters. Now, if you notice on the front of our beluga whales, they have almost look like they're smiling a lot of the time. They have very flexible lips, actually. And this is unique between beluga whales. None of other whales and dolphins actually have these lips. So what they use these lips for is to get their food. So when they're getting food, they will actually use it to churn up and spit water out of their mouths and to try to get a lot of that kind of stuff churning up at the bottom of the ocean floor. Now when they do this, they're actually able to eat things like invertebrates and crabs that come out of the sand. You can see
I totally missed that. That was awesome.
Just going one more time. Can we get a round of applause for our brave volunteer? It is very powerful and a very effective feeding strategy for these amazing whales. And this isn't the only way they survive up there. If you notice, they have very small flippers, very small tails relative to their body size. When they're swimming around, they are quite substantial animals, 50% body fat, but again, teeny tiny tails to get around. And this is actually part of the cold in the Arctic. This is why it happens. Now, when you go out into the winter, your fingers and toes tend to get cold first, all those extremities. And it's no different for a beluga. Your tails and pectoral flippers are going to get cold first. So by keeping those very small, they're actually able to lose less heat to the surrounding environment. But don't be fooled by that. They are very substantial whales, and those are very powerful tails for getting around in their homes. Now, it isn't just belugas that are so well adapted for their Arctic homes, it's also the people as well. About 85% of Canada's human population are Inuit, and they've been living in the Arctic with continuous cultures for over 5,000 years. Now, one of the reasons Inuit are so successful at this is because they live off the land. Now, a lot of the vitamins and nutrients that we get from our diets come from eating veggies and fruit. Your parents always tell you to eat that kind of thing. Well, you can't really grow a great orange up in the Arctic. So, a lot of those essential things like vitamin C come from the blubber of beluga whales. Now, this is extremely important even in modern day because a lot of Arctic communities are so isolated, they're only getting a fresh shipment of food from the south once a year. So being able to eat the blubber of belugas is incredibly important for maintaining that traditional way of life in the north. Now, we're not in the Arctic right now, but we still have an effect on it every day. Every time we use energy, we're releasing carbon gases. Those carbon gases get stuck in our atmosphere. It's like we made a blanket of carbon around planet Earth at the moment. And just like when we put on a blanket, things are getting a little bit warmer these days. Very profoundly in the Arctic. Up in the Arctic, sea ice is melting a lot faster in the summer and freezing again much more slowly in the winter. This is having a devastating impact on the food web up there. Because at the bottom of this sea ice, there are millions of plant-like organisms called sea ice algae. And this sea ice algae is what's going to kickstart the rest of that food web. Algae gets eaten by invertebrates, invertebrates get eaten by fish, and if you're a beluga whale, it's a lot of fish in your diet, ladies and gentlemen. Believe me, we pay the cost for these guys to have their food every day. Now, if we lose that Arctic sea ice too much, we're going to lose that sea ice algae, and that will have a direct impact on the lives of belugas and Inuit who depend on them. Now, one of the leading contributing factors to global climate change is energy consumption, and large cities like Vancouver use a lot more energy than small Arctic communities. So you may be surprised to find out that there is a population of beluga whales living next to the two largest cities here in Canada. So it's another geography quiz, ladies and gentlemen. You thought you were out of school, but you were mistaken. What are the two largest cities here in Canada? Toronto and Montreal. Yes, everyone remembers the Anglophone one first. Yes, Toronto and Montreal. Now those cities sit on top of the Great Lake Basin, so water flows from the Great Lakes into the St. Lawrence River, and from there to the Gulf of St. Lawrence in the Atlantic Ocean. It's here in the St. Lawrence River and the Gulf of St. Lawrence, there's a very isolated population of 1,000 beluga whales. Now obviously people in Montreal are not going to rely on these whales for vitamins and nutrients like you might in the north, but some people do rely on them economically. There are a number of small whale watching operations that head out into the St. Lawrence trying to catch a glimpse of these whales. What you're seeing of Tika and Aurora here, that's typically what people see of belugas out in the water. So what do you see on the backs of other whales and dolphins you're not seeing on the backs of a beluga whale? Dorsal fins, yes. Strong, confident, yes. Perfect, the dorsal fin. Instead, you'll notice a dorsal ridge going along the back. It's made out of cartilage going all the way down the length. And that's actually a very important part for researchers and whale watchers to look out for. Because just like we have unique fingerprints, unique to you and you alone, the markings and notches on those dorsal ridges are unique to each whale. And that's how we identify individuals out in open water. Now, if you're a beluga living in the St. Lawrence, there's a lot of different challenges to life than if you're an Arctic whale. Those challenges often come in the form of noise, and they'll come in the form of pollution. And in fact, there's so many pollutants and chemicals and toxins making their way into the St. Lawrence River, it is appearing in the bodies of beluga whales. Blubber samples taken from whales in the St. Lawrence are showing elevated levels of those toxins from industrial runoff and agriculture. So much so that if a body of a beluga washes up onto those shores, it is treated as chemical hazardous waste. That's the official classification, and it must be disposed of in the same way that industrial chemicals are. Now, this isn't the only challenge they're facing out in the St. Lawrence right now. Noise pollution is a huge part of their life. Now, naturally, rivers and estuaries, where those rivers meet up with the oceans, are important nursery grounds for belugas. If you notice Tika over here with Katie, she's a dark gray color. She's very different than the adults that she lives with. This is actually very natural for a beluga. Those river and estuary waters that they're born in are very gray and very murky. So by being born this dark color, belugas like Tika are actually camouflaging with their surrounding environment and making sure that they're growing up healthy and safe for predators. Now when they get older, they will turn whiter. It takes about 5 to 8 years. But these waters, because they are so dark and murky, they have trouble seeing each other. It's hard to keep track of your mother if you're a baby beluga. But luckily, they are very vocal. They use a lot of calls to keep in contact with one another. How about a round of applause for some beluga noise? I heard some people giving a very good impression of the beluga noise along with the beluga.
The baby's so cute, he looks so happy.
They make a huge number of different calls. And they're actually, by being able to study the whales that we have here, we've identified one of the most important calls in their repertoire. It's called a contact call. The contact call is what babies like Tika here used to keep in contact with their mom. They get each other's attention that way. And the call is unique between mother and calf. No two are alike. They are absolutely learned from the mother. Now, in the St. Lawrence River, there's a lot of boat traffic, which means a lot of engine noise, a lot of sonar noise, that kind of thing. Now, if you're a baby beluga, you need to learn this all-important call, and if there's too many engine noises around, it could interfere with your ability to learn it properly. So, luckily, by listening to the beluga whales here, we've actually been able to apply this knowledge and protect whales out in the St. Lawrence. By knowing what this contact call sounds like, we have researchers out in those waters listening for it. And by being able to identify which waters are being used more heavily for nurseries and for baby belugas to grow up and develop, we can set up protected zones in those areas, preventing too much boat traffic from going through, and make sure that belugas like Tika here continue to learn those calls that they need later in life. Now, this kind of research is only possible because of the strong bond of trust built up between our belugas and our trainers here. And to tell us a little bit more about what it's like to work with these whales, Sandra, do you care to enlighten us a little bit about what it's like to work with whales like Aurora?
Sure, Colin. Hi everyone, I'm giving you a wave so you can see where my voice is coming from. And working with marine mammals has always been something that I wanted to do. Working with me today is Aurora, and I have been fortunate enough to build a strong relationship with her. Our number one priority whenever we are working with the animals is always their health care. And we're able to better care for the belugas through voluntary medical behaviors known as animal husbandry. For example, what Aurora is doing right now is called a pet present, and it allows us to take a really good look at her body, and it also allowed us to do voluntary ultrasounds when Aurora was pregnant with Keela or when Keela was pregnant with Tika. With our strong relationships, we're also able to participate in meaningful research projects that help protect these incredible animals. Back to you, Colin.
Thank you very much, Sandra. It is at places like the aquarium where this kind of research is possible, because when you're trying to follow belugas out in open water, it is very difficult. And just by show of hands, who's been to the Arctic before out of my audience today? 2, 3, oh, 4. This is quite a lot, actually. For a couple hundred people here, 4 of you have been to the Arctic. It's not exactly a hot tourist destination. So places like this are the only place where we actually get to learn about and connect with these beluga whales for most people. Now, I was very lucky when I was growing up. When I was 9, I got to go to the Gulf of St. Lawrence and see belugas out in those waters. There was one whale in particular that was well known to the local boats. Her name was Wilma, and she would come quite close to people. Now, unfortunately for Wilma, she did have a run-in with the boat several years after I met her, and she did pass away. This serves as a reminder that we are having an impact on their lives every day. We're changing their environment faster than they may be able to adapt, and only by studying whales in settings like this can we better understand how to protect them